All right, welcome everybody to our Is a Virtual Legal Assistant Right for My Practice? I am going to go ahead and bring up the presentation here, and then we can get going. Okay, so welcome. I'm so glad to have you guys here. Today, what we're going to talk about is a virtual legal assistant right for my practice? So real quick, just a little background on me. I am Laura Licursi. I am the owner and founder of Elite Virtual Assistants. I left corporate America back in 1997. So yes, that was actually 1 year before Google was even a thing. But I actually, I had this great job with the Cleveland Indians. I worked there for about 8 years, and then I was starting a family. As great as that job and that opportunity was, and that whole career revolving around baseball, I knew that I wanted to be home and present more as I was starting a family. So when I left, I actually was very fortunate, and I fell into a work from home position, working for a wholesaler. And back then, remote work was nothing of what it is today. So I really felt that I was really fortunate to fall into that, and that really just evolved. I ended up finding other wholesalers to work for through various channels. I also dabbled in marketing and did things like that, and I did that for about 18 years, and then I started Elite Virtual Assistants in 2015. Just thought, oh, I'm really ready to take this to the next level. I had so many people asking me, like, how can I do what you do? How can I work from home? So that kind of is what prompted me to start the agency. Really didn't know what I was getting into, to be honest with you. But here I am 8 years later, and, I've got this great thriving agency now. I am an alumni of Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. That's a great program. If anybody hasn't taken it yet as a business owner or an attorney, it's wonderful. And we currently hold certifications as a diversity supplier in the city of Cleveland. For the state of Ohio, I'm a women business enterprise, and then EDGE, which is encouraging diversity and inclusion. So I'm very proud to hold those certifications. So today, what we are going to cover are 3 areas plus a bonus. So what we're going to talk about first is, what is a virtual legal assistant? What should I do to prepare to work with a virtual legal assistant? And how can I delegate effectively to a virtual legal assistant? And I'm going to go ahead and call them VLAs going forward, just because it's a little bit easier, not quite as long and tongue twisting. And then our bonus is going to be what to expect in that first 30, 60, and 90 days of working with a VLA. And I like to bring this up because a lot of times people's expectations aren't necessarily realistic. And it's really nice. I've had so many people say that they love to have this guide of what they actually should be expecting. All right, so let's start with, what is a virtual legal assistant, or a VLA? So basically, a VLA is a remote worker that can do anything an in-office assistant can do. So our VLAs are intake specialists. They do document prep, record requests, expense reporting and billing, scheduling, calendar management, client follow-up, really anything that you need them to do. They can just do anything that an in-office assistant can do for you. So a VLA is an affordable way to hire an experienced assistant without having the expense of an employee. And I really like to bring this up because a lot of times we are that quarter to half to 3/4 of a person, right? So if you're a solo, right, a solo attorney just starting out, you might not have the funds or the need for a full-time person, but you need somebody that's going to keep you out of the weeds of your practice, and so that you can actually be out there getting clients, working with clients, like doing what you do best. and having somebody else that's there to support you doing all of that extra, admin work that you really don't need to be doing. We also, another capacity that we work in is if you already have an in-person paralegal or, legal assistant, we are that quarter to half to 3/4 of a person that can assist them. So keep that in the back of your mind, because a lot of times we do become the assistant's assistant, because a lot of times and I'm sure you know this already, but your paralegals and legal assistants are typically overworked. They usually have too much on their plate. And again, you don't really need another full-time person, but you need help. So the great part about hiring a VLA is that there's also no paid vacations, no benefits, no office equipment, no space, supplies. Like, you actually don't have to supply anything in order for them to get up and running with you, except access to whatever they need, to work with. And there's no in-office distractions, which I always find this to be interesting, that, they say that we only have 4 hours of truly focused work time in a day. So you think about that extra time that is truly not focused work, where when you have a legal assistant working with you or a virtual paralegal, they are, they're basically already trained that they are just hyper focused on what they're doing for you, and then they can move on to their next client. But it's amazing what you can get done when you've got that focus. So basically what I'm trying to say is there's really nothing extra. You're only paying for the time that your legal assistant or paralegal is working for you. And they have a lot of flexibility. Usually you can use them as much or as little as you need them, as long as this is communicated with upfront. Couple things to consider though, because there's always a downside to everything. If you really just need that extra person to help pick up the slack, this is a perfect person for you. Some people do not do well with that. They want somebody that's in the, whether they have 8 hours of work or not, they just want somebody that's in the office so that when something pops up, they can give it to them. There's a lot of project management tools out there that can really help with this, but again, it's just not for everybody. It's not ideal for on-demand services either. And I say this because if you need something, done 15 minutes from when you decide you need it done, you cannot guarantee that that person, if they haven't already allotted for that time for you for that day, they may not be able to pick it up. And then it's not ideal for reception type services either. So if you are, somebody who your business is based on a lot of phone calls, which nowadays it's typically not, but if that's kind of where your business comes in and you really need somebody to pick up that phone on the first or second ring, you probably want to use more of a virtual reception service where people are literally waiting there to answer the phone. Otherwise, the way that this works with a virtual assistant is that if they're not able to pick up the phone, it'll roll to a voicemail. And then you just need to set up, set up those expectations that I need this voicemail checked 3 or 4 times a day so that we have a timely response, but it just might not be on that first ring. Okay, so what we're going to talk about now are the 3 action steps to take before you even start working with a virtual legal assistant. And this is important because once again, you want to have a good solid foundation for when you're bringing somebody on to work with you. Okay, so the first one is deciding what to delegate. And this might sound obvious, but I will tell you that a lot of people come to us and say, I know that I need help, but I don't know where to start. I don't know what they can do. I don't know what to delegate. So here's what I say. Track what you're doing on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So if you have the time, if you can track what you're doing for a month, that is ideal, because then you're going to see those tasks that might only be recurring monthly. And again, if this is for an assistant to your assistant, have your assistant do this, right? Have them start, keeping track of what they're doing daily, weekly, monthly. because this is a great way to get a nice snapshot of what you're actually doing and what you can truly delegate. I know it sounds tedious, but believe me, this is the best and most effective way to get started with the delegation piece. And then what you want to do from your list is you need to decide on a few things. So first you have to decide what tasks are yours. So what tasks can only you do, or you would prefer only your assistant to do, depending on, what capacity this person will be working. Think about what your zone of genius is. What do you do best that only you can do, that moves your business forward, and that you're passionate about? The zone of genius is kind of that intersection of those three things. Everything else typically can be delegated. So just think about what tasks from your list are yours and keep track of those, or mark them in some way. Then look at what's left and say, what can I delete? So what am I doing right now that actually has no purpose or reward? And you'll be surprised when you start doing things like this, or you start doing this exercise, at how many things you're doing out of habit versus are they really serving you? And do I actually need to be doing this? And if not, go ahead and check them off. Sometimes it might even be, maybe you hold a position on a board that just doesn't serve you anymore, or you don't have time for anymore. That's something that you can delete off of your list. And now, from what you have left, what can you actually delegate? So what you have left on that list, think about, what can I teach somebody or train somebody to do? Or what do I already have a process or can easily create a process for? And these are the things that you want to get started delegating to your VLA. And then the last part of this is, what tasks can you share? So maybe one of the things that you think is your zone of genius and only you can do, you actually only need to do a piece of it and somebody else can do the rest. So let me give you an example on this. I always like to use the example of like marketing, social media of some sort, right? So let's say that you write an article every month. You like to post it on LinkedIn, or you write a blog, or, you do something, you create a piece of content every month. From that content, you also need to be able to break that up into social media posts, emails, if you're doing email marketing, whatever it is that you are breaking that content up to push out in the way of marketing. You don't need to be doing those pieces, right? You don't need to be creating the posts, creating images, scheduling them, because if you are using social media, those are all things that are really time consuming that you should not be doing as an attorney. Somebody else should be doing that stuff for you. And I'm sure that there's other examples out there that you can probably think about, but that's what I mean about what can you share. So if you need to keep that content piece, you keep that content piece, but you can delegate out the other pieces that are going to it. And then take a look at what you have. You've got all of your different sections now. Does any of the work actually require somebody to physically be in the office with you? Most of the time it doesn't. Or like I said, if you have somebody in the office, what are the things that that person would need to keep? And what pieces can you actually assign to a virtual legal assistant? That you need to think about, who is going to best support you. So if you are like, if you're not going through an agency and you're, trying to find somebody on your own, you really need to think through, does this VLA need a specific skill set, or can I just train the right person? So, personality might be the biggest thing for you. And I bring this up because, we work with a lot of attorneys, and I'd say 95% of them always want somebody with legal experience, right? So they want a paralegal or a legal virtual assistant. I have had a handful of clients, though, that are attorneys come and say, I actually just want an executive assistant because I want to train them to do things the way I'm going to do them in my law firm. And I don't want them to come in with any preconceived perceptions of things, or, bringing in what they've done in the past. Like, you want to train them the way you want to train them. And we've actually had a lot of success with that. So these are just some of the things that you want to think through as you're trying to decide who the best support person for you is going to be. And then you need to think about how you're going to onboard your VLA. So you want to think about, do I have processes ready for those repetitive tasks? And we'll get into this a little more, but one recommendation that I have, especially when you are creating these processes, is to use something called Loom, Loom, and it is a Chrome extension, and it's a thing of beauty. You just click the button, you can record what you're doing on your screen, which is great because you are creating a process for somebody to follow and you're actually getting work done all at the same time. And then you can always take that and break that out into steps if you want. If not, that's a perfect first job for your virtual assistant. Tell them to follow this Loom process and then break it out into steps. You also want to make sure that you're really clear, or that you share, I should say, your mission, vision, and guiding principles. And the reason that I say this is because it's important for somebody to understand why you're doing what you're doing, because it helps them to understand why and how they can start making decisions on their own. So you always want to be able to have that bigger picture of, this is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, because it really does help somebody get to learn, from that in future decision-making processes. And then just be very, very clear about what your expectations are regarding the engagement. I can't say this enough, that communication and having clear expectations is literally the key to a successful virtual relationship. Okay, now let's talk about how you're going to delegate effectively. So I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to delegate effectively to a virtual legal assistant. So the first tip, start small. Start with those low stakes tasks and projects. You don't want to hand something over to somebody who it's going to make or break your practice. Okay, you need to start small, because you also want somebody to be able to grasp what they're learning, because then the faster they grasp it, the faster you're going to be able to give them more work to do. So start with those low stakes tasks or projects. Make sure that they're repetitive tasks too. Like, the worst thing is kind of throwing somebody into a project, but they don't have a regular cadence of work to do for you, because it makes it hard for you guys to be able to build trust and build your relationship quicker. And then think about the easiest task or project to capture with a process. So like I said, if you are doing a repetitive thing daily, weekly, or monthly, and you can capture it with Loom easily, then go ahead and make that one of the first things on your list that you already went through and categorized. Start with that. Okay, tip 2, make sure that you provide the information and resources that your VLA need to accomplish the tasks and to make good decisions. So I have actually seen this time and time again, where people are not prepared once they bring their assistant on. And if you have to go through like IT, or, there's other people that have to help with this, you need to make sure that you have this ironed out before you onboard somebody, because otherwise you're kind of wasting time in the beginning to get up and running. So you want to make sure that you've got some processes in place, or that you have some type of system for somebody to kind of, get their feet wet, and that they have all of the access that they need to be able to do the job you hired them to do. And then also you want to make sure that you are really clear that you've got that desired outcome. So when you are handing tasks off and delegating to somebody, again, I can't stress enough about the clear expectations of what you want that outcome to be. And then also making sure that you put deadlines to everything. I can't tell you how many times people will come to us and say, well, I gave work to I gave work to my virtual assistant and it's not done yet. And we'll say, well, what was the deadline? And Then we find out that there was no deadline. And, you know, you've got to be really clear. Deadlines can be moved unless they're hard deadlines, but, you know, people have to have those boundaries. So you need to make sure that all of that is really clear from the beginning. And then this is what's going to help with that, is creating that communication plan. So you need to agree with your VLA on the preferred form of communication, and then make sure that you set a meeting cadence. So what this does, especially in that first like 4 to 6 weeks, it is so important because that person is not physically with you. You need to be checking in with them to make sure that you're able to give feedback to them and they can give feedback to you on what's working and what's not working. And make sure that you try to do it on a video if you can. Once you guys get, once you get in a rhythm and you're comfortable with each other, you can do phone calls. But I suggest in the beginning doing video as much as possible, because again, you need to be building that foundation for you to continue to, hand work to this person. Make sure that you have clarity around both parties' availability. So if you have certain days that you are in the office and certain days that you're not, or certain days are set aside for clients or times of the day, you need to make sure that your VLA knows that. And then you also need to know what their availability is. You need to know what their schedule's like. Are they going to be, doing time blocking for you? If they're only working a very small amount of hours a week, let's say you have somebody for 20 hours a week and they're only working 5 hours, on average a week. Make sure that you understand, is that going to be daily? Is it going to be Tuesday, Thursday? Is it, you need to know when they're going to be available to you, and then set incremental goals. And we'll talk about this a little bit more as we move through this presentation, but make sure that you're setting goals at like 30, 60, 90 days so that you're able to gauge if this relationship is working, and if not, well, what can you do to make it work better on both sides? So one thing I like to share with everybody, and I didn't want to go through all of the levels of delegation, but there are 6 levels of delegation, okay? The first one is the most basic, right? This is where everybody should start. Level 1, step-by-step instructions. You need to be having your VLA report back for feedback and next steps. This might sound elementary. People a lot of times don't like to take the time to do it, but like anything else in life, the more time you put in up front, the less time you're going to be spending down the road trying to work things out or figure things out. And I know that this is going to sound crazy and it's not to be demeaning, but when you are working with somebody and explaining how to do something and creating processes for somebody, pretend that you're trying to teach a 5th grader to do it, because you've got to be really specific. A lot of times in your mind, or again, if it's your assistant that is, creating this for somebody, it's in your mind, you skip pieces and you just kind of put in the highlights. Well, they can't always fill in the pieces in between, or they might fill them in wrong. So you need to make sure that you're crystal clear with step-by-step instructions in that very beginning, and getting that feedback again on both sides. Because what you're going to do is, if you build that foundation in the beginning, you're going to get to level 6 quicker, where it's delegate and forget, right? Like, hey, I need you to do this. Boom, that person knows it. I see a lot of people try to start the relationship out at a level 6 delegation, and it's a disaster, because even if they have experience, everybody does things differently or handles things in a different way. You need to take that time up front so that that person knows this is what's expected and this is the process that we follow. So what you've done here is you created a success roadmap, right? So we talked about, knowing who you need to delegate to and what's involved in that, what you're going to delegate, how you're going to delegate, and then we went over the tips to delegate effectively. So now you've just created a process for yourself so that every task or project you're going to outsource from this point forward, you have a roadmap to follow. You can literally do this all the time. I can't tell you how many, I probably take 3 times a year that I go through and start documenting all of the stuff that I do on a regular basis, or we use Asana as project management. I will go back through my Asana tasks, all of the stuff that I've completed, and I always find something else in there that I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't need to be doing this. I could give this to somebody, or this isn't serving a purpose for me anymore. So it's always a good idea to do this process over again. When you can, even if it's once a year, it's better than never doing it, because you're always going to find something that somebody else can help you with to free up even more time. So as you move through the process, you can kind of see how tasks can become projects, which can become roles, right? So if you just start outsourcing, a handful of tasks over time, that's going to evolve into a role itself. So this is a really good step-by-step process to be able to get to that point. Okay, so now let's talk real quick, the little bonus section here, about what to expect in that first 30, 60, and 90 days of working with a virtual legal assistant. 30 days, you want to be able to build trust, right? And like I said, just a couple slides ago, this is level 1 delegation. So you want to learn about one another and what communication style works best. Understand and acclimate with the company culture. That's what your VLA should be doing, understanding and really getting a feel for the company culture, learning what your products and services are, having at least weekly, if not bi-weekly, conversations to provide and receive feedback. Again, remember, that's on both ends. They should be learning the necessary tools and software in that first 30 days that they need to perform the role. And they should be able to complete 1 to 2 assigned tasks or projects. And like I said, when you want to set those incremental goals, set a goal at the end of 30 days that, this is what you want to happen. And then when you hit that 30-day review mark, did you achieve it? If not, why not? Was there a bottleneck? Was there a roadblock? What got in the way of actually, stopping you from achieving this goal? 60 days. This is where systems and processes are, really kicking in. So, again, feedback on both ends. What's working? What's not working? Is there anything new that we need to do or create? Continue working on whatever that next set of assigned tasks or projects are, so that you'll have your 60-day check-in and you can, be able to go back and gauge what's working and what's not. There should be added responsibilities and team integration. If you're a solo and, this is your right hand, that you guys should be really building some trust and just forming a solid relationship by the end of 60 days. And if they're working with a team, they should feel like they're part of the team, not like they're somebody that's off in, in remote land. And then 90 days. 90 days is they should be working independently by the end of 90 days, so that at the end of 3 months, they should be completely integrated with your team or company. Tasks and projects should be completed independently at this point. The VLA owns and manages multiple responsibilities, and the lines of communication are completely open. So if there's ever a problem on any end, that these are wide open, your communication's wide open, everything's really clear, and you guys are able to talk through, whatever things that are going great or any roadblocks that actually are coming up. So if you're not going, if you're not going to go through an agency and you are going to hire a freelancer, and even if you are going through an agency, a couple of these actually still apply. So if you're looking for a freelance, ask for referrals or go to a trusted source. A lot of times, we have people come to the agency because they've been burned in other ways, because, you can go through something like Upwork or Fiverr or just hire a freelancer, but you don't have that support of, hey, I'm having a problem, or hey, I need a replacement, or hey, my VA just up and left and now I have to start the process all over again. It's unfortunate, and I hate to even say this, but in this day and age, this happens all the time. And it does not matter if it is a remote worker or somebody that's in office. Like, people are just, people just have a different view of working nowadays. And, you can find yourself without help at the drop of a hat. So you want to make sure that you are getting solid referrals or that you have a trusted source to get your virtual assistant from. Use a password manager. I don't care who you get your VA from, but don't share all of your password information directly with somebody. Share it through LastPass or another password manager. We use LastPass. I love it. It's basically like a password vault. And what you're doing is sharing the access to whatever the app is without sharing the actual password. It works about 95% of the time. And I say that because there are some programs that are, it just doesn't always work 100%, but believe me, always try to use LastPass first, because if that person just leaves or, for some reason you have like a high turnover rate, you don't have to be going in and changing your passwords for everything every time this happens. You literally just stop sharing access with somebody through this vault. And then use a non-disclosure agreement if that's, if you want that little extra added protection. So like, for example, with our agency, we have an agreement with our virtual assistants, and that has a confidentiality clause in it. We have an agreement with our clients, which also covers confidentiality in there. But most attorneys that we work with will also use a non-disclosure agreement between the virtual assistant and their practice. So there's always something that you can do for extra protection. All right, if you have any questions, I would love for you guys to, reach out anytime. You can email me, Laura@elitevirtualassist.com. You can visit our website, elitevirtualassist.com. And we have an FAQ section on there. And you can also just book a call with us if you would like more information or have some questions that you need answered. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great day.